Hello and welcome back to the Keeping Abreast podcast with Dr. Jen. I'm your host, Dr. Jen Simmons, and today I am bringing you a story of surviving, of thriving, of a woman who is living her best life despite her diagnosis and is here today to share her experience with you, share her wisdom with you, and allow you to have some insight into how this disease affects people, and what you can do to harness your power around this diagnosis. So I'm going to welcome Tess Guevara. Tessa, I'm so delighted to have you here today. I know that you are a breast cancer survivor, but you're also a nutritionist, a certified health coach, and you are a nurse anesthetist. So you accompany and embody the medical field, both in the conventional way as a nurse anesthetist, and then as a nutritionist and a certified health coach, you kind of see the other side of it and you see the layers and the nuances. So I'm so delighted to have you here today to share your experience and to share your wisdom because people need to hear it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You're getting me on um, a very good morning. Like I am really I had an experience at the doctor's office just a while ago, drawing blood, and I just had a moment. And I think if you are a breast cancer survivor, you just know what that means. You just have your moments. Like you go through your day like everything is okay, and then something happens and it really triggers. So I have no doubt, because there is no accidents in life, or very few, that is the reason why that happened. So I could come and like fully share today and just be as transparent and authentic as possible. So on any day, I would be happy to spend time with you. But today is really extra special. So I'm super, super, super excited to be here.
Well, I'm super happy to have you. So, can you start off by just sharing with us your breast cancer story?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that my husband um, kind of put it simply whenever I had to like literally come home and tell him the news. In that he just looked at me and started crying and said, I've never seen him cry, but he started crying and said, "I don't understand. Like you are the healthiest breast cancer person I know." Like up into that point, up into the point of my diagnosis, I think I was the pretty average, American woman, in that, you know, the average American woman from the generation that was promised that we could do everything. Like we could have it all. We can have a career, and we can be a mom, and we can run a home. Like we were promised all that, right? And so I was like truly fulfilling that promise that was given to me. And
Do you believe that?
do I believe that? Now I I'm questioning it, honestly, because I really think that there is a way to have it all, but you just have to be very mindful about the way that you are going about getting it. And I think that was where I just completely derailed the train for me and put my body in in harm's way unknowingly.
Yeah.
And I see so many women that are following that same path,
Yeah.
because we have to do all of the things to keep up, and that really sort of deprives and starves our body from the things that it really needs to make hormones. Like I just feel like um at that point in my life, I was really attacking my body's ability to make hormones. Therefore, I was not making any. Therefore, I was investing in hormone therapy. And once I got on that train, you literally can't get off, because you're replacing hormones that your body is designed to make, but you can't because you're too busy trying to,
Yeah.
have it
Well,
all.
I want to get there. I want to get there. Before I do, I just want to share with you the words that I was given in residency because I think they're so appropriate now. So, as a surgical resident, I'm like so geared up to take on the world, right? And I feel so empowered and like I can do it all. And there aren't a lot of female surgeons. So I was the only female surgeon in my class. And of our staff of like 45 attending surgeons, three of them or two of them were women.
Mm-hmm.
And so we meet as a department every week. And in the very beginning of the year, one of the female surgeons came up to me. Her name is Diana Dixon Whitmore. We used to call her DDW. And she came up to me and she asked me if she could take me out to dinner. And, of course, like she was accomplished and married and children and a successful career and admired. And so, of course, I jumped on the opportunity and we had a lovely dinner. And at the end of the dinner, she left me with this: Jen, I see all the excitement in you. I see all the potential in you. I want to share these words with you because I know that you have been raised to think that you can have it all. And you can, but you can't have it all at once.
Mm.
And I was so fortunate to have those words of wisdom, though I didn't appreciate or believe them then. I was
Yeah.
so fortunate to have those words of wisdom so early in my career that I was able to take that to heart. And I was able to look back on it during times of challenge and remember, oh yeah, this is where the balance comes in. Like you can be a wife and you can be a mother and you can be a surgeon and you can be an athlete, but you're never going to do all of those things well at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is power.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's part of that balance. I'm sorry, my dog is crying.
No, that's
I
okay.
would love for you to share where your balance fell off because you started by saying that you were the healthiest woman with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So often this happens where I'm seeing a new patient and they say to me, I'm healthy, except I have breast cancer. And I think that that happens so often with so much disconnect that people do not see the difference and they don't see the connection that if you have breast cancer, you probably aren't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But what we see on the outside and what's happening on the inside are often different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I understand it because I think that, you know, I did look really great on the outside, but on the inside, that wasn't happening. And, where the disconnect happened was, I really feel like I got caught up in the busyness of life. And even though I knew about self-care, even though I, had all of the new, I ate really well, but I really think the disconnect for me was I did not have any work-life balance. I did not take the time to invest in self-care and understand like the true value of self-care and what it brings to a female body. Like that to me was a complete and utter disconnect. Like I did not get that piece like I understand it now. And I do feel like in some aspects our generation has also been groomed to detach from our bodies. And so I realized that I was detached because, we're always told like, oh, it's just in your head. Oh, well, this is what it's like to be a woman if you're, not sleeping or your periods are heavy or whatever, and there's not a pill for it, then it's just all in your head. Right. And so there was that detachment piece and that work-life balance piece that I was not honoring, that I really feel like was, the huge disconnect for me. Not to say that if I did self-care, I wouldn't have gotten breast cancer, but I believe that that is so important for women. That's an investment in your body that you can easily be making.
Yeah.
Um,
But you mentioned that you had clues before this because you mentioned that your hormones shut down and you
mhm,
started on hormone replacement. So
yep.
talk to us about the signals that your body was giving us. What did that look like for you?
So there was a lot of like not sleeping through the night. That was like one of the first signs. Energy levels, how energy levels drop over the course of the day. I was waking up not feeling rested. What's really interesting is that I've always had this, like drive to be intimate with my husband. Like that didn't go away. I mean, it's not there now as a survivor, and that's for other hormonal reasons. But at the time, I've always been the man in our relationship, and needing and wanting and all of that. But
You're
as
talking
far
about
as,
libido.
yes,
Hmm.
libido was always there, on point.
Hmm.
So but it was more the
So
energy level.
even with your perceived hormone disruption, that
Mhm.
the libido part didn't change for you.
It did not change for me.
You're
And
you're really lucky
yeah,
because with
like
most women that's not the case.
yeah, like that's never been an issue at that particular time. And I mean, once you give a woman testosterone, like it only like, I was like a teenager, like it was just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um, you know, anyway, so it was really sort of the energy and sleep and just the overall feel good that
Hmm.
hormone replacement was kind of like my my juice to get me to having it all and doing it all at once, like you're
Uh-huh.
saying. Like I'm
Yeah.
literally gonna have it all. And then there was always this fear in the background of, menopause and making that transition and how difficult it was gonna be. And I literally thought that, I was doing my body I was giving my body what it needed. And, you know, in hindsight, I feel like we are, given everything that we need to survive in terms of hormones. It's more of the lifestyle piece that we're not used to. And we're not honoring in our lives, that is causing that depletion that so
Yeah.
many women experience.
Well, also, we are living so far out of our system design
Hmm.
because we are modern beings. We're living on a very old gene code,
Hmm.
and we only really know two states. So we know sympathetic state or fight and flight,
Hmm.
and we know parasympathetic, which is rest and repair. And we
Hmm.
are built to spend the vast majority of our time in that parasympathetic rest and repair state. And
Hmm.
only for short periods of time are we designed to be in that sympathetic state. So
Hmm.
we are designed to come out of the cave in the morning and encounter the saber-tooth tiger, at which point we can either run away and escape or get eaten.
Hmm.
But we are not meant to run away and escape for 3 hours or 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years.
Hmm.
And yet our current reality is filled with saber-toothed tigers.
Yep.
And we unfortunately spend the vast majority of our time in sympathetic tone, in
Hmm.
that chronic sympathetic state. And as a result, we don't have the opportunity or the ability to heal.
Yes, totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, when you talk about work life balance, you're really talking about sympathetic versus parasympathetic
Hmm.
balance. And
Hmm.
that you were in sympathetic mode, that driven mode, which is great for getting ahead, but not meant to be sustained.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
Like we can do it for 3 days when we need to cross an ocean, but we
Hmm.
can't do it for 3 months and 3 years. And
Yes.
that is what we are all asking of ourselves. We're
Mhm.
all asking ourselves to cross the ocean constantly.
Yes. And it's so, it's so, crazy is not the word. I'm trying to think of the word to describe it, but, I see so many women on that trajectory.
Mhm.
And it's hard to get them off because they're too focused on, oh, I've got all of the things to do, right? And it's like, oh, if you just take a time out
I
and
know.
get into parasympathetic instead of being in sympathetic all of the time.
And making a list and deciding how many of those things really matter.
Mhm, mhm,
Because when it comes down to it, like so many of the things that we allow to hijack us and occupy our time and attention
mhm.
are things that are not important.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
We put a lot
Yeah.
of pressure on ourselves, I
We
think.
do. We do.
Unnecessary.
We absolutely do.
Mhm,
Um, and it's funny because I think that there is a huge difference between men and women in that regard,
mhm,
in that um, I I allow the busyness of life to dictate my time, and my husband does not.
mhm.
My
Yes.
husband my husband is very good with the, yeah, that doesn't matter.
Yes, mine is the same. And
Mhm.
it's always interesting to me how they can turn things off.
Mhm.
And, it's like, work is done for the day, shut the laptop and, shut the computer down and don't think about it.
Yeah.
Whereas like I have a tendency to ruminate over things that happened in my
Yeah.
work day,
Yeah.
and you'll never get that from a man. And
Yeah.
I've
That's
noticed
absolutely
that as
true.
well.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like we have a holiday dinner coming up.
Mhm,
And, for me, it's very stressful because I have the table to set and I have to pull out all the china and I have to get all the serving pieces and I have to make sure the tablecloth is washed and the napkins and the this and the that. And then I have to cook all the food. And he's like, I got it. And I'm
mhm,
like, well, what do you mean?
mhm,
And so I was having this discussion with my friend Amy, and my friend Amy said, why don't you let him have it?
mhm,
And just like see what happens. And you'll eat off of paper plates and paper napkins, and it is what it is. Like let
mhm,
him have it.
mhm.
I can't though. I can't. I can't do it. I
And
can't
that
do
to
it.
me
I would
is
love to
okay.
say that I could,
Yeah.
but I can't. I
Yeah.
can't.
And that's okay because you have the expectation of how you want the dinner to go,
Yeah.
right?
But
And
to him, he sees what's important. The important
yeah,
part is that we're all together, that the
yeah,
family is together, that we
yeah,
spend time together. And
yeah.
meanwhile, I'm going to waste all of my time in the kitchen
Mhm,
and not be a part of things. So
mhm.
I know he's right. And yet I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
yeah,
I can't.
yeah. Do you think that that is like, because I try to rationalize it in my mind, do you think that that is truly a function of oxytocin and, the way that hormone sort of drives us to take care of others and things? Or is that something else? Because I'm trying to
It's an
justify it
excellent
in my head.
question. It's an
Mhm,
excellent question. I haven't thought about it. I mean, what women perceive as love and connection and acceptance is definitely different than men.
mhm,
And I know the reason that we want to fill the world with beauty is because it is in that arena that
mhm,
we feel loved. Like when we create something beautiful and people appreciate it, we feel the love.
mhm,
So I think that that's where it's coming from, but I'm not 100% sure.
mhm.
But I do know that the the small stuff that I sweat all the time doesn't even occur to him.
Yeah.
And I do believe that sweating all that small stuff has consequences
Mhm. Yeah. I believe
and is
so too.
definitely contributes to the diagnosis.
Mhm,
And people talk about perfectionism all the time and how that is a huge contributor to stress, to that sympathetic state, to diagnoses, to
Mhm.
chronic disease. And that's definitely a part of the picture.
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah. I totally agree. And you know what's so interesting? And I was having this thought this morning because I have to um, like be strategic about what happened, because I'm making a transition from, being a W-2 CRNA to a 1099 CRNA. So there's much more stress in that transition than I actually anticipated. And so, just in terms of, what things need to get done and moved around and this and that. And I noticed this morning that I was like, hold on, I am getting caught up in the story of this, whatever it is, kind of like, having to transition whenever from, cancer patient to survivor, you have to sort of make a transition mentally
yeah.
and understanding that, oh, I'm smart, I am capable, I'm not going to let the story affect how I am showing up, because if I do, then I won't be showing up as my best self. And
Mhm.
this is just something that needs to be figured out, and stop getting caught up in the story of it all and just execute, so I'm kind of like relating that to, the process of getting ready for your dinner, because you have, the things that you want to do, but you don't want to get caught up in the story of it all. And, that's another thing, I could go all day, is where I see women kind of like derailing. But yeah, I think we get so caught up in our story sometimes that we lose our own power, that we have control of the situation, and we're giving it away to the story that we're telling in our heads.
Mhm.
So anyway, I'm
That's
going
so
on a
true.
tangent.
That's so true. So I
Yeah.
want to back up because you started to talk about hormone replacement.
Hmm.
So I want to hear that story and what was happening with you and what that looked like, what the workup was, and how you decided to go on hormone replacement, what you went on, how old were you, and then how did that lead to your breast cancer diagnosis?
Oh, this is great. So, it was, I was overhearing a conversation, another mom. It was at, the school book fair when my kids were younger. And she was talking about a functional medicine provider that she had found, over in, a city next to where I live. And I was like, oh, I'm really interested in that, because, at the time I wasn't interested in it in terms of, all the other things. I was feeling tired, I wasn't sleeping well, feeling like there was hormonal transition of perimenopause, scared to go into menopause without, some guidance in that area to help me transition. I was like, I don't have time to have hot flashes and whatnot. So, went simple blood work. Oh, you have, low testosterone, we're not going to touch estrogen. So I did pellets for, testosterone pellets solely for, that was in after my daughter was born, and I was 38 at the time. Yeah, I was 38. And so that's kind of when I started. And it was just testosterone up until the point of diagnosis. What's
So
interesting.
just out of curiosity, what did "we're not going to touch estrogen" mean?
um that she at the time she was like, you don't need estrogen because you're not transitioning into, menopause.
Mhm.
um so
But your testosterone levels were low, but you didn't have any problems with libido.
mm-mm,
Your problems were mostly with energy.
mm-hmm, yes. And
Interesting.
yeah, so, it was testosterone pellets, sleeping good, energy level was good. What was interesting was that, I never needed less, it was always more, right? And I definitely knew, when my 3 months was up and I needed another pellet. You talk about turning into a crazy person, like that was me. And, along with, following, what my testosterone levels, of course, there was cortisol that we were monitoring. other things like homocysteine. Um, and then we started monitoring my ability for my own body to make growth hormone. And that was starting to decline. And that was declining over, several years that we were watching it. And then whenever it came out that, you can start injecting yourself with growth hormone, that was the next thing. And so then I started using that. And you
So
can,
how old were you at this point?
I was 46, 47,
Mm-hmm. So
and
you'd been on testosterone for a while at this point.
Mirena
Okay.
IUD after Is was born,
Mm-hmm.
and growth hormone. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no, no. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so
and
the Mirena has a little bit of progesterone in it. Were your progesterone levels okay?
oh no, thank you for reminding me. No, progesterone levels were in the tank. I was using, a sustained release progesterone at nighttime. Um,
Okay. Along with at the time that you were taking, you had the thyroid, the testosterone pellets
mhm,
placed.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, Jen, is that whenever I got pregnant with Izzy, I was 38. So I started, all the testosterone after she was born.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would have been 38. But so I conceived her whenever I was 37. And, what's been really beautiful about any sort of health related problem that I have is that I'm connected to healthcare. I mean, it paid off in dividends whenever I was diagnosed with cancer. I mean, I couldn't have had a better experience. But whenever I got pregnant with Izzy, I just knew something was wrong. Like, I was like, something is not right. And I was in the OR with my OB-GYN, and I was like, look, I know I'm early, something's not right. So he had me in there, drew a progesterone level. My progesterone level at that time was, tanking. And so he put me on oral progesterone. And still to this day, I wonder what would have happened to her if I would have never been that intuitive with what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's a whole nother thing. That's another sideline conversation, and I'm getting off topic here. But yes, so it was progesterone that I started with. The testosterone was on that for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
um, and or up until diagnosis. And then I started the growth hormone around 46, 47.
And what was
And
the goal of the growth hormone? What was
was
happening for
to
you?
was to help with sleep. Because I would have problems with sleep on and off. Like, even though the testosterone, I, started primarily using it for energy and sleep, I would still kind of go through these spurts whenever I would. Um,
It's funny though, because you're being given something for energy and then struggling with sleep,
mhm, yeah.
right? And it's kind of counterintuitive that like
Mhm,
maybe we back off the energy thing so that we don't cause sleep disruption.
mhm,
Logic.
yeah. Yeah.
Hindsight
Yeah.
is 2020.
Hindsight is 2020. And I can remember watching her, this doctor, in her office. And she said, whenever we were deciding, because I always had a chance to say yes, no, whatever. But I can remember her saying, the only problem with starting the growth hormone was that you could grow a tumor, but you don't have any history. So we're,
But was that really
go ahead.
true? Did you
Yeah.
really have no history?
Who knows? My mom, she died in a car accident around the same age that I was diagnosed. And she had found something that in one of her breasts, that she was going to go get investigated that very week that she was killed. So I don't really know if there was a history or not. And
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't even think about that until I was putting the pieces together after my own diagnosis. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, there might have been something there. I just
Yeah.
wasn't aware. Just didn't think of it in the time.
Yeah. It's funny because we started to talk about how history repeats itself and how maybe this is you're living out your mother's experience or
Hmm.
diagnosis because she didn't get the opportunity to do
Hmm.
that. But when you were diagnosed, what was the response in terms of what did your doctor say about this hormone?
It was very ominous, because at the time I can remember asking, and there hasn't been a study, so nothing to point to, and
Yeah.
so there was a lot of like inconclusiveness around it. And there was like, well, I do see a lot of patients that are investing in hormone replacement in the form of pellets, but it was more of like that storyline.
Mhm.
There's nothing that no study that they can point to
Yeah.
that says that
See,
there's a direct
to
relation.
to be honest, I mean, I don't blame the hormone.
Mhm,
Um, Although, we can argue that if you're using synthetic hormone, that
mhm,
that is inflammatory. And there's no question about the fact that breast cancer is an environmental disease, and so much of our environment are things that we create.
mhm,
And, the earth that we're living on now, this is not our grandmother's earth. It's not even our mother's earth. We're
mhm,
living on a far more toxic earth. Some of those toxins are really obvious, and some of those toxins are invisible,
mhm.
like difficult jobs, difficult relationships, abuse, trauma, things that we don't necessarily think about as concrete causes of cancer that actually contribute hugely to the
Mhm.
development of cancer.
Yes.
And so, your body, in needing this hormone replacement, was already telling you that
Mhm,
it didn't have what it needed to thrive.
mhm,
Right. And so I could see blaming the hormone, but to me, the much bigger issue is why did you need that hormone?
mhm.
I mean, you were 38 years old, for God's sakes. Like, this should not be a time when your ovaries shut down and don't provide you what you need.
Yes, exactly. And, that was the connection that I wasn't making. And, that in hindsight, now I see it so differently. And, I have the feeling that, we weren't created imperfectly, because if I believe that I didn't have what I needed, that's proof that we were made imperfectly, and we weren't.
Yeah.
Like, we were built and by design have everything that we need to survive and thrive. It's just a matter of, like you said, that environmental piece we are missing.
Yeah.
We're internalizing too many things, we're doing too many things,
We're
and
we're perfect beings living in a very imperfect environment.
yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and and so I had that feeling, as I can remember in hindsight, as a survivor. And then I also have it as I'll also have this piece in my brain that, now that I've gone through every aromatase inhibitor and now I'm on tamoxifen, you know, I feel like I feel
And
like
that's because you had ER positive
ER positive.
disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what else did you do for treatment so people know?
So the HER2, I had to do chemo, 6 rounds of
Did you have Adriamycin cytoxan? Did you have cytoxan Taxotere,
I had
Taxol?
I had Taxotere and carboplatin.
Hmm.
And then I had Herceptin and Perjeta for those 6, and then I continued it for a year. And then
Hmm.
after that, I took I believe it's the Perjeta in pill form for the year after that, and
Hmm.
that's for the HER2. I had to do 6 rounds of the Zometa, so I've completed that, and then I had to go on an AI for recurrence, and I haven't done really well with the AIs, and then I got switched over for joint pain. Like I was having tons and tons and tons of joint pain, and
So, did
I,
you go into menopause with the chemotherapy? Were
I'm
you already
guessing I was.
menopausal and you
I
didn't
was not
know?
menopausal. They, the oncologist was like, okay, we're going to do lab work. We did, 1 round of lab work. They looked at my FSH, LH, said, you're in menopause. Congratulations. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
We
what
are
a
going to start you
delightful
on,
state.
yeah, an aromatase inhibitor. So be excited about that. And, to be honest, I wasn't. And I'm still not to this day, because I feel like, and this goes back to the detachment that I was mentioning earlier. Like, I feel like women have been under attack for a very long time. And, with this like grooming to detach, and always playing on women's emotions to get, whatever political gain out there. That's another soapbox I can get on. But, here in the now, there's been this attack on estrogen, and I'm still being attacked. And estrogen is what makes us women. And they are attacking the very hormone that is responsible for making me female, and I'm not even mentioning, attacking my bone health, my brain health, and my, cardiovascular health. But, I feel like I'm under attack. And so every time I have to open that bottle and take that pill, I just get angry, because I feel like, the whole world is on this attack of women. And,
Hmm.
I just do not believe, along with believing that our creator made us with everything that we needed to transition, thrive. Hell, our bodies, our hormones fluctuate on a monthly basis. Like, we really think that our body is not being made to, experience hormonal decline. I mean, that was dumb on my part. But, on the flip side of that, I don't believe that God gave us estrogen as a dangerous compound that needs to be battled.
Of course not. I mean, if you believe that estrogen causes breast cancer, then by definition, you believe that God put us here to get breast cancer, which
Yes.
is a ridiculous
Yes.
concept, a ridiculous notion, and is not supported in any of the literature.
No.
In fact, when we look at the incidence of breast cancer, what does it do with age? It increases with age. What
Yes.
happens to estrogen after women go through menopause?
It
It's
goes down.
gone. It's gone. You can barely measure it. The average age of menopause in this country is 52.
Yeah.
So we are talking about the vast majority of breast cancers happening in an estrogen deprived state.
Yes.
So if estrogen's the problem, why does the problem rear its head when estrogen is gone?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any
And
sense.
yet people so want to hang on to that explanation because it's easy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
And it keeps you like medically managed, right? There's a pill for
Well,
that.
there's a
So
pill for that. That is the major driver. There's a pill
yes,
for that.
yes, yes, yes.
So you finished your chemo and you said that you took a number of aromatase inhibitors and
Mhm.
then now you're on tamoxifen.
Mhm.
Is that because you didn't tolerate the aromatase inhibitors?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Or I was
Do you want to share your experience?
yes, like I had terrible joint pain, and the other thing that I did not like was, well, there's a few things. There's the joint pain that was terrible. You talk about getting out of bed and feeling like you're 90 years old. Like that's exactly how I felt. I could barely move. I love, love, love the thought of having the ability to, work out, to feel good. I mean, that's just part of my being. Like I really love that feeling. And
Mhm.
so getting up and, even my husband would watch me and he'd be like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, it just takes me a minute to like get going." And,
Yeah.
once I would get going, it would be okay. I started having elbow pain. And, whenever you work in anesthesia, you have to use, I mean, this is your open the
Yeah.
airway right here.
Yeah.
And so, that was whenever that started to happen, I was like, okay, I can't, I mean, this is, interfering with livelihood. So they switched me to another one. And, along with the joint pain, I kind of like mowed through all of them. Along with the joint pain, there's the whole dry vagina that's just, I mean, just unbearable. And I'm
Awful.
not talking about using it for, um, you know, my own pleasure. I'm just talking about just walking around with dry vagina is not a fun thing. I don't recommend it.
Yeah,
It's
no,
terrible.
vaginal atrophy is horrible. It's
Yes.
horrible.
Yes.
And
And
women really suffer.
yes. And, I didn't realize that, how much of my own sort of mental well being as a woman was tied to my vagina. Like, never thought about my vagina until that time. But then, then you put your foot up in the stirrups and you hear your, gynecologist say, "Oh, there's a lot of atrophy down here." And, I just wanted to reach up and slap her and be like, "Do you think this is how I want to be?" Like, you know, say something that is a little different than that
Yeah.
because I
And
know it.
I think
I don't
it's
want
really
you to feel
important for people to know that the American Menopausal Society has put out a position statement that intravaginal estrogen is safe for
Mhm,
everyone, including people who have a history of breast cancer, and that women, especially women who have been treated for breast cancer, should universally be put on intravaginal estrogen in
mhm.
order to prevent these exact symptoms, in order to prevent the vaginal atrophy, and also to protect the health of the bladder.
Yeah, yep, because I started having UTIs.
Yes. So,
Um,
this is what everyone who has a history of breast cancer should be talking to their doctor about. And
yes,
everyone who has a history of breast cancer should be on intravaginal estrogen.
absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
The last thing that I did not like or appreciate was, the 20-pound weight gain right off the bat. And, like I'm a nutritionist, I know what to eat, and I think I just got caught up in the throes of being insulin resistant without even knowing it. So whenever you're insulin resistant, you can gain weight eating really good food. I
Yep.
mean, it's not the food's
So
fault.
true. It doesn't matter. Right. Because when you're insulin resistant, like all you're going to do is store.
Mhm.
That's
That's
all
it.
you're going to do is store.
And that's what I did,
Mhm.
drinking a beautiful green protein shake every morning, 20 pounds, just like that. Permanent, not moving. Like it's been a struggle and don't appreciate that again.
Yeah.
Could go all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. It's brutal. It's brutal. So, you started to talk about the transition in your job
Mhm,
from being a W-9 employee
mhm,
to being a 1099. And I want to talk about the transition from being a breast cancer patient to
mhm,
being a survivor,
mhm,
because that's a really difficult time.
mhm,
And I say it's the quiet after the storm.
mhm,
It is going from constant noise, and let's be honest, I mean, it's noisy, right? There's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of stuff going on, there's a lot of busy stuff, there's a lot of treatment, there are a
mhm,
lot of appointments,
mhm.
and you go from that to you're good, see ya, and it's scary,
Yes. It's very scary
and
and
it's lonely.
it is. It is.
So
No
how did
one.
you make that transition and how's it going?
So that's a really great question because I feel like when you're in the throes of a cancer diagnosis, um, there was a point that I really had to come to terms with my own spirituality, and it was such a powerful moment. Um, I have a problem calling you Jen because I'm used to calling doctors like Dr. Simmons. So I'm just calling you Jen.
You can call me Dr. Jen. It's fine.
So there was such a point in, early on in my diagnosis because, whenever you have that diagnosis, it's important to really get your mind right because, there's so much going on around you. And so I was waking up in the middle of the night. This was like probably 3 weeks into my diagnosis. And, I was waking up with doubt. And so I had a really good friend at work that I was confiding in and trying to get my spirituality right, so I could really become that warrior that I felt like I needed to be. And so at the time, I was working on an OB CRNA team, and we worked 24-hour shifts. So I was coming off a 24-hour shift. I was going to do a couple of hours of C-sections after that shift. And I had scheduled an appointment at the cancer center to get my lab draw done. It was after my first chemo treatment. And you have to go and get lab work done to make sure that your counts are good. And you don't need a blood transfusion and white cell
Or
transfusion
your
and all
white
that.
cells aren't too
Yeah,
low
yeah,
because
yeah,
we generally won't treat you if your white
yeah,
cells are too low.
yeah. So they wound up letting me go earlier than I was supposed to from work. So I called the cancer center because I was like, I don't want to go home and then come back this afternoon. So I was like, I want to call and move my appointment up so I can just do it on the way home and just go and be home. Right. So before I left work, I sat down with my friend that I trusted and I was like, look, I'm a believer and I believe in God and I believe that God is in control, but I'm having doubts. So I'm feeling like this is not making me a good believer because I am doubting and, doubting my faith. And it's really making me feel bad. And he said, all you need to do, Tessa, is, live in the present moment. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. Just you are supposed to be here and now. And I was like, okay, so good. So go to the cancer center, reminding you I wasn't supposed to be there at that time. Go and get my lab draw. Go and sit upstairs in the atrium where all the other cancer patients are waiting outside the chemo room to go in and get their treatment. I was just there because they have to come out and clear you so you can, go about your way and bless you and you can
Mm-hmm.
go into the world. So I'm sitting there, and mind you, it's after a 24-hour shift. I pick a spot where there's no one around. I can lean my head back and just wait because I know it's going to be probably 45 minutes. So I lean my head back, eyes closed, and this guy comes and sits down next to me. And he is talking. And I am looking around, kind of like, what's this guy doing? There's other seats. They're open. Like, can you go and sit? Can
In
you
your
sit?
personal space.
I'm eyes closed, don't want to talk, whatever.
Yeah.
So finally I was like,
Read the
okay.
room.
Yeah. I was like, okay. I'm going to listen to what this guy has to say. And he turns to me and he says, do you know who cures cancer? And I was like, oh, you know, this should be good. I'm going to say who. So I said who, and he's like, God does. And I was like, holy moly. I just got an angel sitting down next to me, and he just delivered a message to me about how doctors are here on this earth doing his work, and you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about a thing. He's got this. His name was Charlie. He was from Israel. I will never forget. I'm trying to find a Hebrew tattoo artist to tattoo his name on my body, because at that point I was changed. I knew that a message was sent from a higher power. I didn't have anything to worry about. All I had to do was show up, and show up in a way that would, please, to please God, and spread
Mhm.
his message, right?
It's
And
so
so,
it's so interesting that you say that, because the truth is that if you go in with the frame of mind that this is going to cure you, then it's going to cure you.
mhm,
And if you go in with a frame of mind that with doubt,
yeah,
with I'm not saying that you shouldn't fear what happens in treatment, of course. Like,
mhm,
it's scary, you feel out of control. But what you believe will happen will.
mhm, yes,
And that ignitement of your faith, that
mhm,
awakening, um, I'm sure you feel it today.
yeah,
That,
still,
yeah,
still
that
to
it
this
it
day.
lights your fire.
Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
all I have to do is show up. I don't have to have control of the situation at all. All my job is to do is to show up and be present. So, that sort of helped me. That was kind of the jumping off point to becoming, a cancer patient to a survivor. All I have to do is like truly show up in a moment. It does feel different, because you're like, you've got the warrior mentality when you're
Mhm.
in the fight, and then you're like, and then after the fight is done, then the processing has to start,
Yeah.
and then you start like, holy crap, what just happened to me?
Mhm.
And then having to, what's really interesting, and one of the most powerful thoughts that I've had in making that transition is being very cognizant of who I was before, and not repeating those same patterns, because I'm different now.
Yeah.
The experience makes me different, and so there's this rush that you want to get back to just being normal, but your normal is different, and I'm not a fan of like the
Well,
new
and
normal.
it's your
That's not gonna,
normal that got you there.
yeah, yeah. And so you become anew. And I love that you can sort of pick and choose the things that you're going to put, time into, and, let the other things go. I think that, I'm still trying to do this. And one of my crutches, the way that I numb, because all of us numb in very different ways, and numbing can be things like watching Netflix, so you can avoid certain emotions, or
Mhm.
being on social media, or eating ice cream, or binge eating, or whatever. We're always trying to buffer. So my buffer is work. Like, I can like dive off into a work bender like nobody's
Mhm.
business, because
Yeah.
that keeps me from feeling. And so, I have to be really, really careful, and feeling the emotions. And that's kind of, it comes up in different ways. Like this morning, whenever I was at my primary care, um, and we were getting labs drawn, and I have to use the left arm only, and it hurts. Like, this is the first time that it really hurt, whenever I was getting my lab drawn, and I just lost it. I was like, I have, so for as much work that I've done, I still feel like, as a survivor, I process it in those moments whenever they present themselves. And I let myself sort of feel those emotions fully, because I think it's so important with, still, even 4 years later, I'm still transitioning, and that's okay, and I'm allowed
Mhm.
to have those moments.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
But
So,
the recognition that you have changed your life, that you've set your priorities differently, and you have developed a respect for what your body needs,
mm-hmm,
right? And it's that intuition that so often we don't dial into until we have to dial into it,
Mhm.
right? And our diagnoses end up dictating our relationship with ourselves.
Yes.
Because if you're not going to respect the relationship with yourself, the relationship with your body, the relationship with your mind and spirit, then you're going to lose that relationship and lose that connection and lose your health.
Mhm.
Um,
100%.
yeah. So I would love you to leave people with some advice for people just getting on this journey, for just getting a diagnosis, for setting out on their treatment journey. What can you say to them? What advice can you give them that can help make their journey easier?
I think, it's important to get really present with your body and present in your world as it is now, and be very in tuned to, where you are and what you might be there for, and be open to kind of like my Charlie experience. Because I think that every cancer person has probably a person diagnosed with cancer has something, has a similar story out there. But if you're not open to it, then you're going to miss it. And, just be open to, those kinds of experience. Be open to the experience of people coming from everywhere and wanting to love on you. Just be open to those instances, because you need that to be able to put yourself and your body and your mind and your spirit in the right position
Mhm.
to go through the battle and, and win. Kind of like you said, cancer is an environmental disease, and so everything about your whole landscape, including what goes through your mind, including, where you are in the world and where your life is taking you, just be open to experiencing all of it. Even experiencing those emotions whenever you just lose it. You don't have to have an excuse for losing it. Those emotions were made to be felt as well, and it's okay to feel them. It's okay to let them out, and it's okay to just open up your world to um, allowing all of the things to come in. Because I've never felt more loved. I've never felt more seen than when I was going through my diagnosis. Like, I got to really show the world who I was. And, I invite you, even in the midst of, you know, terrible, terrible news and, terrible prognoses. Like, if that is not a wake up call for you to show up to your life like you want to show up, I don't know what is. And so, rather than looking at it as the end, look at it as a beginning. That's what I would say.
I love that. And a beginning to a new chapter,
Mhm.
right? And I think giving yourself permission to ask why, ask what needs to be changed, ask what, how you got here and how you're going to pave a different path forward.
Mhm.
Because we know that without change, we can't expect change. And even for women who are seemingly healthy, right? I'm healthy, but I have breast cancer, there is some message there for you. And I actually don't go to the battle kind of imagery because I think that we're fighting enough.
Mhm.
And so I choose to come at it with a love and acceptance,
Mhm. That's beautiful.
and knowing that, cancer isn't a foreign invader. Cancer is a part of you, and it's the part
Mhm.
of you that's saying that this isn't working.
Mhm.
And if we can, instead of seeing it as a punishment or another thing to fight, if we can instead frame it as an opportunity, we can often come out the other side better for it,
Mhm.
with better health, more aligned to our values, we were talking about in the beginning, it's so easy to power through. It's
Mhm.
so easy to be so goal oriented and to allow your priorities to be hijacked by the accomplishment.
Mhm.
And when it's only when you're given these opportunities to slow down and say, is this really important?
Mhm.
What is really important to me? What do I want to be remembered for? Because you have to start living your life, building that story that you want to be remembered for.
Yes. 100%.
And for many people, this is the opportunity to do that, to be in alignment, to remind yourself of what your purpose is and what's important to you, and double down on that.
Mhm. Yes. 100%.
So I loved spending time with you here today. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your experience. And I just hope that women can use it to empower them to ask questions, to realign their lives, and to capture the health that they want.
Yes. Me too. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you so much for being here. It's Dr. Jen. Bye for now.